Who's to blame for this last loss? Which unit do you put it on? And are the 49ers even the favorite to win the NFC West at this point? This is a team that we expected to potentially be the number one seed, go to another Super Bowl. Right now, they are last place in the NFC West. So who are you picking? The 49ers or the field? We'll discuss those things, plus more, and we'll do it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. It's Tuesday night, which means my boy, So Real, Sue Neal, is back in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Man, oh man. I mean, we can't even say it's Tuesday and that means I'm on, because most Tuesdays I'm not on. It's been kind of wild at work, but it was good, man. We got to spend the weekend together. Got to experience, Wayne, got to experience, unfortunate 49er game. But I got to say, man, I don't mean to put you on the spot and embarrass you, but I think the highlight was just seeing how much you impact the fan base that watches your show. The amount of people that came up, wanted pictures with you, Jesse, just sat there and, chopped it up with them for, the time that they did. And it was the gambit, man. You had Rams fans, you had 49ers fans. It's just so cool to, see what this channel has done. Just to be a small part of it, man. I feel blessed. And, it was a great weekend, minus the loss, obviously, but it was good to just see, how much of an impact you have from the opposite side of the country, my man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, man. And Rams fans were great. 49er fans are obviously always great. And this channel isn't what it is without you and David and so many other people that have contributed over the years. And then really the chat, the people that watch. It's crazy because football is one thing and we give our football opinions, but life is so much more than football. And I think meeting people, putting a face and having conversation, putting a face with whoever it is you're talking to, just it really changes things, man. It really puts things into perspective, and people were fantastic. So I had an awesome time. Yes, the 49ers lost, but I mean, outside of that, really the trip couldn't have been better. We made the most of our time together for sure, man. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for hosting me, man. Thank you for letting me stay with you. It was an absolute blast. I want to say this because we got a Rams fan in here and he says, whose house? Can we both just talk for a second about how much noise is pumped into that stadium?
It's wild. Like, we were sitting around a few sprinkled Rams fans, right? There wasn't a whole section of Rams fans, but every time they screamed out whose house, I'm looking around and none of them are saying anything, but somehow there's all of this Rams house, and you're looking, and even like the Jumbotron, you're not seeing just big groups of Rams fans that are screaming out Rams house. So there's definitely some CGI type stuff that's going on at that stadium. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it was pretty clear early on. We're looking at probably a 70-30 crowd, yet somehow in big moments, every time it was a third down for the 49ers, the whole place was rocking. It's so weird how that worked, but they definitely pump in crowd noise. I know that you can pump in noise to like a certain limit. Each team can. I don't know what that limit is, but it sure did feel like it was a lot more than the limit. But no excuse. That is not why the 49ers lost the game at all. It was just an interesting observation that we had. And we made the observation when we were up 14-0. So it's not like we were, complaining about it after the fact. We were talking about it very early on in the game.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's talk about a couple things that came out of this game, which were some pretty devastating injuries. The first one is Javon Hargrave. He tore his triceps. And remember that night, that viral play was going around about him. And I think that's the play that he ended up tearing his tricep. So feel bad for him. His season seems to be done. I would assume that his career with the 49ers is likely done. So what do you think about this? I mean, you and I briefly discussed it in the morning. We went to the airport very, very early that morning. We had to fly out, both of us, around 6:45. And at that time, we thought it was still a contusion to the tricep, but things changed rapidly. So what are your thoughts on this injury for Hargrave?
Yeah, man, you're selling yourself short because you mentioned that you thought, based off of that viral play, that you thought it was a torn tricep and
Mhm.
that he would be out for the season if that was true. And
Yeah.
the minute that I found out, I messaged you and I said, "Man, Jesse, you were right." Um, I mean, obviously, it sucks for Hargrave. You know, when you're getting up on in age, any like season-ending injury is tough to come back from, especially a muscle in the body that they use so much as a defensive lineman, right? You have to have that strength to be able to push off and things like that. So you feel for the guy. I do agree with you. I find it hard to believe that he would be back with the 49ers unless it's on some like really, really prove it type. And I don't even know that's possible based off of the years and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it would have to be extremely financially make like a steal for the 49ers to keep him, which I doubt that's going to happen. As far as what it does for the overall outlook of the team, I mean, Hargrave, I don't think is necessarily a person that like helps out in the run game. Like I don't think he like they're gonna miss him because all of a sudden he's like the best run defender at all. But he had 2 sacks that game. He obviously is known for his ability to rush the passer. And there was a reason why the 49ers brought him in. I don't think he's lived up necessarily to the contract that they gave him, but on any given Sunday, he can dominate a game, and he did so just not too long ago with the Eagles, where he had an amazing season with them. So obviously, it hurts more than I don't think there's a silver lining where you could just be like, oh, the team could get better now that he's not there. And it hurts the rotation. Obviously, he's a starter, hurts the depth. So I mean, a defensive line that I think, you thought could potentially be as good, if not a little bit better than last season, definitely doesn't seem so that way when you lose such a big piece like that.
Yeah, it was a massive piece. I mean, it's funny because when you look at it, people know or think that Hargrave has not lived up to expectations as far as what he's being paid. And I completely agree with that. But it doesn't also mean that he's not the best interior defensive lineman they have, right? Both things can be true. He's not living up to expectation, but he's still the best interior defensive lineman they have. And so now when you look at it, you've lost Armstead and Hargrave, and you're replacing Kinlaw, and you're replacing them with Collins, Jordan Elliott, and I mean, I don't know who at
Yeah.
this point. You know what I mean? So that's a definite down. I mean, that's a downgrade no matter how you slice it. So it is. It's going to hurt. And this is a defensive line that really is not getting after the quarterback the way that we're used to, anyways. And now they've lost their best interior pass rusher. That's not going to help things unless other players start stepping up and holding a little bit more of their weight. But just on the surface, losing a player like Hargrave doesn't help your pass rush in any form or fashion.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we'll get in deeper about like this defensive line not getting to the or not creating the pass rushes we're looking for, or maybe not living up to expectations as well, and why that is. But ultimately, the best talent always is going to make your job easier, and it becomes harder when you lose that talent. You mentioned it. I mean, I hadn't even been thinking about it that way, Jesse. Especially when you see Armstead left and Kinlaw left. From last year to this year, right? Your whole interior rotation is gone, and so it's like usually that's not a good sign, especially when there's not like big name replacements and things like that. I guess you get to see, hey, is Kosrick worth, this is why you pay kosher type of money. He is able to get the best out of players that might not have performed elsewhere. But usually that's in spot duty. It's not in 3-down duty or,
Hmm.
like a full-time starter duty. And so that's, I think, why it's more impactful is like these guys who are, used to just focusing on, maybe a handful of plays per game and really being effective at that time, now have to figure out, how do I play every single down? Like, how could I be effective like that? And there's a difference between a 3-down starter, a starter, and, a rotational piece. And the 49ers defensive line usually works because they have everybody kind of knowing their role. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of guys are going to have to step up and play bigger than what they maybe thought going in. And, I guess it's to be determined, but obviously not ideal.
No, it's definitely not. Now let's talk a little bit about CMC real quick, because technically he's eligible to come back after what? Not this week, but next week, after next week. So they've got 2 more games, and then he's able to come back. It doesn't sound like he's going to be back by then. By the way, it sounds like it's going to be longer than the 4 weeks that he was out for on injured reserve. But now he's gone to Germany to get procedures done that you can't really get done in the United States, to try to help heal that Achilles. What do you think about hearing this when you hear that he's going across to a whole new country to try to figure this out? Like,
Yeah.
where does your mind go with that?
Well, I mean, the first thing is like, how did we go from, hey, he could have played if this was a playoff game, to, charter jets to Germany to have, out of country type stem cell, procedures or whatever it is. So, I mean, clearly his rehab isn't going ideal. I guess that's going to be the theme of the show. It's not ideal, but I mean, look, I know when Kobe had his injuries, I don't remember if it was the Achilles one, but I know definitely for his knee, he spoke amazing things about going over to Germany, getting those stem cells, and like feeling like 100% immediately, or feeling like he could get back to normal and play. So maybe it's a good sign. I don't know. Maybe if it does, if it does replenish the way that a lot of athletes do it. It's not like he's the only one, right, Jesse? So
Right.
I think that if, maybe it could be a good thing if it does end up, getting him back to playing ability. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is just like, why act like his injury wasn't as bad as what it was? And then you have to question, like, who was was it our team doctors that didn't think that it was that bad? Is it just, hey, we're going off of what CMC says? Like, ultimately you gave this guy more money this off season, and you did that. You would hope that you went through your physical and made sure that this guy was healthy, but we knew that he was injured, they said, and you still gave him the money, and now it's looking like, he's not going to be available even after IR. Like, so it's just like, I don't know. It's just more to add to the confusion of this offseason, and questioning how well this the decision making was made from the front office when it came to this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, people are super frustrated with BA, but I haven't heard one person be like, and what the hell's going on? Why'd you pay CMC? I haven't heard one person say that. In fact, all I heard was how smart it was for the 49ers to do. It was, I mean, that's just so smart. Just pure genius for them to extend him the way that they did and just give him extra money that wasn't guaranteed. That was the best thing they could have done. That's what I heard when he signed. And now nobody's saying anything about CMC, when clearly that is a way worse than what they've done with Brandon Ayuk, because at least one is out there playing at the moment. The other one, I don't even know. Is he going to play this season? I don't even know if there's a guarantee he steps on the field at all at this point.
Yeah, and if it even smart to do so, right? Because ultimately, if it snaps, then you're talking about not only will that impact this season, Jesse, but it's going to impact next season as well. So it's like, what's really going on with this injury? Nobody seems to be giving, at least by the words, Jesse, they're not giving us a straight answer, but by the actions, we could read in and say, hey, it's not going as well as they would like it to be, right? We're not talking about, hey, CMC is practicing and CMC is, feeling good about starting and coming back and he's a few weeks away. No, we're hearing he's flying to Germany for second opinions and more procedures. That's usually not a good sign of somebody's healing the way that they want him to.
Well, and I remember this offseason talking about some of the players that were aging on this roster and how they have decisions to make. And CMC was one of the first guys I talked about. Said at 28, that's when running backs fall off, and so many people really push back on that. And I understand it. I understand it because he came off an incredible season. He was the offensive player of the year, and all you can do is go off of what you just saw. But when it happens for players, running backs specifically, it's not just a gradual decline. Usually, it's usually like here and then boom, immediate drop off, and that's what we're seeing with CMC now. Hopefully he can get back, play this year, and look good again. That's a possibility. I'm not completely ruling that out. But I'm also not ruling out that he doesn't ever play a snap for the 49ers again. Like, it could be a myriad of things. And it could be anywhere in between that as well. Like, he could come back this year and play great. He could never play for the 49ers again. And he could be anywhere in between on that scale where he misses this year, plays next year, and is good or isn't good, or there's so many options here. But right now, it doesn't feel great that they gave him guaranteed money when they could have just had him sitting there. And it's like, well, if you play, then you'll get your money. But if not, like, sorry, man.
Yeah, and I mean, to prove your point, we could talk about two of the better running backs over the last 5 years or so, both of which happen to be Cowboys now, but both of which just fell off of a cliff, and that's Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook. Both of those guys were superstar running backs, fantasy, top picks and all that kind of stuff, and you didn't see it coming. They didn't have like this slow decline. It just all of a sudden they went from starting Super Bowl, like super fantasy type player, and then boom, like non-existent, right? And so I mean, it's hard to say that that's going to happen to CMC, but this isn't promising. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's not promising at all. And I saw KB Toy Stores said, do you think he'll be out for the year? I honestly don't know. I don't want to like fully speculate on that, but it definitely seems like that's a real possibility, and that's a bummer. Gabriel Ramirez says, Jesse, what other franchise would accept the amount of mismanagement, ignorant drafting, poor personnel decisions, signing injured and old players beyond their worth? I think this goes both ways. There's a lot of franchises that would love the last 7 years that the 49ers have had also. I think, look at the Carolina Panthers. I'm sure that they are just like clamoring for anything close to what we've had. So, but I think when you look at some of the winning franchises across the NFL, I don't know. I mean, I think that the end of the rope would be coming soon, but the 49ers were also in a really, really bad spot before those 7 years. So I can kind of go both ways with it, man. I really can. Lowe says, do you think this may be the first obvious time that Lynch and Kyle are not on the same page? I bet Lynch wants Mustafa, Cowing, and Curtis Robinson on the field. Well, it is interesting because John Lynch did say on the radio on Friday, I think, that he expects Cowing to get some burn this weekend, and he got like none. So, yeah, I mean, that is a little weird that one said, yeah, I think he's going to play, and the other one's like, no, he's not playing at all. So, I don't know. That is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think even some of the rumors that you hear are that maybe they haven't been on the same page, or and that there's a little bit more pressure on one more than the other and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and look, when the team isn't winning, it's easy to start talking about all of this stuff, right? If if they beat the Rams, are we having the same narratives and things like that? And we've gone through this every single season, right, Jesse? There's 2 or 3 games that the 49ers lose, and then all of a sudden they look really, really good. And all the stuff that we were talking about during that, the fan base forgets, and it's all back to Super Bowl, and everybody's great, and Kyle Shanahan is the best, and John Lynch is the best, and like, so when we're down, we're down. How many of these narratives are going to stick, even if they start winning? How many of these narratives are the same, even if they're 3-0 right now? So like that's kind of how I would want to judge some of these comments and some of these criticisms. Will we still be saying the same thing if they're 3-0 looking dominant, like they did week 1, right? Nobody was saying that after week 1, right? So, but yeah, I think they're fair criticisms for right now. But we'll see, if they turn it around, like the same old and aging players also have been through things, are wise, and know how not to let go of the rope. That's also what you need to be able to make a turnaround and rattle off some victories to make a run. So there's also that. But yeah, I do think there needs to be changes.
The question is are we the what 2010s version of, or near 2010 version of the Celtics when they won the championship with some of those older players? Or are we the mid 90s Houston Rockets where we have all the great players and it's like, they're just really old? I don't know. We'll find out. But right now it feels like those Rockets teams. So we'll see if they can pull out of it. Garrett says, could the firing of Wilkes create a stigma that would limit the 49ers to only hiring internally? If we really do attempt to hire outside the organization, would anyone want to sign with us? I think that they would, but at the same time, it just depends. Like, are you going to give them full reign? Or are you going to make them do what happened with Wilkes? Because I think that would probably limit some people as far as what they decide to do as well. Okay. Actually, there we go. Let's get into this one real quick. So the 49ers lose the game. They're 1-2. They do have the Patriots coming up, so that feels good. And then they have back-to-back division games. So you can come out of this 3-0 and look really, really good. Or if you lose another game out of these 3 and one of them's in division, it can be a problem. So right now, what would you say that your panic meter is at? 1 through 10. 10 being you're just panicking. I feel like I'm in a fire. Let's grab all of our belongings that we can and run out. Or like 1 being, you know what? Like there's a fire, but it's 10 blocks that way. I'm good. You know what I mean? Where are you at on it?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the cop out. I'm gonna put myself at a 5. I'm gonna say I smell gas, but I don't think that there's any candles lit. You know what I mean?
All
So
right.
I'm like, oh, okay, I could just air this stuff out potentially, and we'll be safe. But yeah, I know where the leak is, type of thing, right?
Yeah.
But
it doesn't smell like rotten eggs, so it's not carbon monoxide. You're good. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, and I think what you mentioned, Jesse, like, I mean, this is only 3 games in.
Mm-hmm.
They've lost to, we've seen them lose 2, 3 in a row, and then go on and win, win 10 straight, win 11 straight, 12 straight, and make it to the Super Bowl. So for me, it's like, okay, are the components still there where this team can still win? And I do think that yes, they need to win. Are they going to win as is, in the sense, is everything copacetic and they don't need to make any changes? No. That's why, hey, it's going to be dependent on certain changes being made. But it's not like we still don't have a Nick Bosa on the team. It's not like we still don't have, these all pros, and that Jordan Mason isn't playing amazing, and that Brock Purdy isn't playing really well, and that, guys like Jennings are stepping up, and this is still the best secondary that we, all offseason, this is the best secondary that we have. It's not like, those guys that we still don't have that same talent. I do think that there's a clock now where they need to figure it out quicker than maybe they needed to, because they've lost these last few games. But I still think that there's potential there. So I'm not jumping off of a cliff, but I definitely want to, hey, I want to be aware. I don't want to sit here and just, think that next week's going to be better just because we're playing the Patriots. No, I need to make sure that we're doing everything and paying attention to detail to be able to assure ourselves a victory next week.
Absolutely. Did I say that? I mean, the only show I've done since the post game was yesterday. I don't remember saying that. I think what I did say, 15 minutes of truth, was going into this game, if they lose for a team that you expect to win a Super Bowl, it's a game that they have to win. And if they don't, it spells trouble. And I do. I believe in this moment it definitely spells trouble. Now, I don't necessarily think that their season's done by any means or they can't make the playoffs. But I'm a little bit higher than Sunil, and I agree with Kevin here. I'm at about a 6. So I'm not fully there, but I'm definitely leaning more towards panic. And the reason is really it's the injuries on top of everything else. You just can't predict injuries. And this season, already, I feel like they're more injured than they were all of last year, and they're only 3 games in. The Rams, that was a game that was very, very winnable. The loss to the Vikings now all of a sudden doesn't look so bad. And that was one of the talking points when we were watching the game. Sunil, we were like, okay, if they win this game, all of a sudden in the post game, we go and we have a much different perspective over what we had a week ago, because the way that the Vikings beat the Texans was super impressive. The Texans, are an up and coming team, great quarterback, really good receiving core, and they just mopped them, absolutely mopped them. So we're like, all right, losing to the Vikings all of a sudden is cool. And then you took care of business in the other 2 games. You're feeling really good. But then they blew another 10-point lead the way that they seem to do. They lose the game and your perspective completely changes. Like, okay, well, this was a game that you not only should have won going into it, but you had fully in your grasp and you just let it go. And so now you look at it and say, okay, you have 1 win and 2 losses, but both those losses are in the NFC, which means your tiebreakers are already in trouble. As seeding starts happening, if you make the playoffs, there's always seeding fights. And it's like, okay, well, this team and this team have the same record, but what was their NFC record? The 49ers are already 0-2 in the NFC. If you beat the Patriots, great, but your 2 wins are against the AFC East. That doesn't really help you in these tiebreaker situations. So you lose to the Cardinals or the Seahawks over the next 2 weeks, it can get really, really ugly from a tiebreaker standpoint. And now all of a sudden, there's a good chance that if you do make the playoffs, you're on the road for these playoffs. And that's what it is. So that's what concerns me the most. I just feel like this team talked about it last year, and I feel like it's even more important this year to get the number 1 seed. It's not necessarily that I don't think they can sneak into the playoffs, because I look at the teams in the NFC and I feel like that 6-7 seed are still very up for grabs. You could see a 9-win team make it. I just think the bottom and the end of the NFC is so weak that the 49ers can have an atrocious season for their standards, still make the playoffs. But we're talking about a team that we want to win a Super Bowl and expect to be fighting for a Super Bowl. You make it under those circumstances, man, and it's just not going to happen. You're going to get bounced if you're lucky in the divisional. So that's why I say my panic meter is at a 6 from a standpoint of I'm trying to win a Super Bowl this year, and that's what I'm putting it up against.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that the last 2 times the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl, they were the number 1 seed, right? So that goes hand in hand with, their ability to make it to the Super Bowl. It is going to be tough to do that, right? But once again, it's still only 3 games, right? So a lot has to happen still before we know. But I agree, 6-5, we're right around the same level. We both wouldn't be surprised, I guess, either way, based off of if it goes all the way to hell and more injuries and more losses and all that, or if it goes where they just rattle off another 10 wins back to back to back to back and look really, really good, and they're once again the team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs.
Yeah, certainly it could go either way, but I'll lean slightly above that 5 mark. Dazza says it's still early and they still have a chance to make the Super Bowl, but at what point would you consider a rebuild? Oh, well, that's going to parlay perfect into our next topic, so we'll save that one for a second. And Shady Luke says, Jesse, you know that I'm an Eagles fan, and deadass, not me hating, but I did think the defense would take a step back, but not as much as I'm seeing. I don't think you've ever come in here and hate. I think you've actually praised the 49ers quite a bit while you've been in here. And I think that if that was your take before the season, man, that's a really good take. And it has. It's taken a step back much further than I think anybody would have imagine, and it's unfortunate. Well, let's talk about that for a second. So, the question before that was from Daza, and he said, at what point do you start to throw in the towel? Well, question. I mean, should the 49ers be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? And I'll give you an out. I think it's hard to make this decision right now in this moment. But what would you need to see? They're approaching the trade deadline. At what point do you say, hey, they should be buyers or they should be sellers? You get to week 8. What does the record have to be for them to be a buyer? And what should their record be if they're going to be a seller? And I think that matches up perfect with Daz's question, because it's basically saying, hey, in this situation, we're pushing through and we're fighting for a Super Bowl. And in this situation, we're out. We're completely out. Like, I don't want to see any of it. What would you have to see?
Give you a record. I'm going to give you a result in a game.
Okay, let's do it.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, okay. The barometer.
How they look against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, tells you everything. If they go out there and they get trounced by the Chiefs, you got to be sellers, because ultimately that's the team. That's the measuring stick, right? That's the team that is the reason why we don't have 2 Super Bowls. That's the best team in the NFL. That is the barometer for, are you a Super Bowl contender or not? If the Kansas City Chiefs go out there and, have their way with us, or, it's not even close, absolutely have to be sellers. If it's a competitive game and we lose, I still think you have to be sellers.
Okay.
But if we go out there and we win, even if it's a close win, or, the best thing would be like, go out there and really handle them. At that point, I think you are buyers, because ultimately, with the way they've spent their money and all this kind, this is truly their last chance to be able to win with these players. And so you might as well just go all in when you know that, hey, we can do this. So to me, I would make that decision after that game, Jesse.
I like that. That's actually a really good answer, Sunil. That's I love that answer. Okay. All right. I like it. I don't know if I'll necessarily go off of that game. Now, I've been on record of saying, if the 49ers lose, the 49ers have to beat the Chiefs from a psychological standpoint. And I've said it a million times, and 49er fans push back, and I get it, because, games have been closer and what. Okay. I'll say it one more time. The Chiefs look at the 49ers the way that we look at the Cowboys. All right. If there's any chance for the Cowboys to have a chance in the playoffs against the 49ers, they have to beat them in the playoffs, or beat them in the regular season. Because if they meet in the playoffs and they get beat in the regular season again, where are you going to find the psychological mindset to even stay in that game? And the same thing goes for the 49ers. If the 49ers happen to play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, if they're lucky enough to get there again, both those teams, and you've lost to the Chiefs yet again in the regular season, there's no way that you believe in your heart of hearts that you can win that game. You can't. So that game does mean everything for the 49ers, a lot more than it means for the Chiefs. If the Chiefs lose that game, it's just whatever. It's another game. You went into a tough environment across country and you lost. No big deal. We're on to the next week. But for the 49ers, that game means everything. And same thing if the 49ers lost to the Cowboys. I believe that situation stays the same. So I do like the answer. What I will say is, before they play the Chiefs, they play the Cardinals and the Seahawks. They also play the Patriots. So those are the next 4 games: Patriots, Cardinals, Seahawks, Chiefs. If they come out of that game with 2 losses and one of them being in division, cut the cord. It's over. At that point, you would be at best 1-2 in the division. And if your 2 losses came in division, now you're 0-3. It's over. Even if you beat the Chiefs, if you lost to the Cardinals and you lost to the Seahawks, it's done. Like, it's time to sell. And the reason that you have to play this tightly is because you can't continue to add money to a team that doesn't really have a chance to win a Super Bowl, because you're mortgaging the future. You're hurting the future. Even if that deal's a 1-year deal, you're taking away money that you're under the salary cap now that can roll over into next year and help you big time. So to me, 2 more losses in the next 4, it's over. I'm tapping out. But if they can go 3-1, I feel really, really good about their chances. Really good about their
And
chances.
what's your definition of sellers? Let's say they're 2-2, right? What do you mean by sellers? Like, what pieces could be the ones that go?
So I would say a couple things. One, sellers means you're just staying put and
Right.
not, not doing anything. You're not adding. Basically, you're not adding to the roster. But if a team comes calling for a Deebo Samuel, a contender comes calling for a Deebo, or some of these guys that are aging, or Christian comes back and they're like, hey, you know what? We're trying to make a run. We'll take Christian. Do it, man. Yeah, I would have said Hargrave, but now he's injured, so nobody's gonna want Hargrave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at contracts like Deebo. I'm looking at contracts like CMC. Honestly, I know it sounds crazy, but even Trent Williams at 36 years old. Yeah, I mean, if these teams are trying to make a run and they're going to give us a good pick for it, like a 2nd round, 3rd round pick, multiple picks, something like that, I think you pull the trigger. I think you let these guys walk and you start the rebuilding process. So hopefully they're 3-1 and I won't feel that way. But if somebody comes calling and you're 2-2 over the next 4 and one of those losses was in division, that's it for me. That's it.
What about front office? If let's say they are going to be sellers, at that point, do you part ways with Lynch? Or do you do that off season potentially, or because
yeah, you know what I think. I think that Lynch has done enough to where even if you make that decision, you have enough dignity to allow him to find a job, because he can go be an announcer this offseason.
Yeah.
So you let him go find a job, and then you play in the media. You play the mutual game, like John Lynch did such a great job here, but mutually, he wanted to go, and so we let him out of the contract. And thank you so much for everything. You know what I mean? You give him his dignity on the way out. I don't know that I would just cut ties with him mid-season. I feel like that would be a little harsh, because you don't have to,
unless
you know what I mean. Unless he wants to, of course, yes. Unless he wants to.
Yeah.
But I'm also not. Go ahead. What was that?
I said I just think that's going to be more intriguing, because at this point, if you become sellers for a team that's been, that went all in up this season, right? At that point, somebody has to be accountable for that. And to me, I know a lot of people are going to say maybe Shanahan needs to, which, look, I think that's fair game. But the person that's handing out all that money definitely has to be, I think, held accountable, right? Because Kyle Shanahan doesn't make the contracts, right? And John Lynch ended up, deciding to pay Ayuk, deciding to pay Trent, deciding to pay CMC, deciding to pay all these people, and then at the mid-season you become sellers. That's a bad investment.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, it would look weird. It would look weird if those guys, if you rework their deals and then sold on them. But I mean, what do you do? I mean, those are the guys that you get rid of. You're not going to get rid of a Purdy. You're not going to get rid of an Ayuk. You're not going to get rid of a Fred or a Bosa, right? I mean, I would think not. Hopefully not. So maybe a Charvarius Ward. I would put Charvarius Ward on the market for sure, because chances are you're not going to sign him anyways. And I think Demo, if you're choosing between him and Demo's younger, that's your choice. So yeah, Charvarius Ward would be, Hufanga would be on that list as well, because I think Malik's going to step in for him next year. So those are the players I'd be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, and look, we got 4 weeks to decide that. I personally
for sure
that these guys can come out, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting as a thought experiment, but it's sad that we're at this point where we're even contemplating. I know. Right? That's not where we were at the beginning.
No. I agree with you, man. I agree with you. It is funny because I was so willing to eat crow about the whole, the vibes of the offseason. And people, when they won the first game, was like, oh, vibes of the offseason. I thought you said when you were at training camp, the vibes are off. And I was like, hey, listen, man, credit to them. I'm fine being wrong. And they came out and got the win. Now it's like 3 weeks in. I was like, remember the vibes conversation? Maybe that was real. Keith says, Keith the Unbeaten says, what about when Tampa lost to the Saints every game, then beat New Orleans in the playoffs? What about we beat the Rams like 8 times in a row and lost in the playoffs? So if we lost to the Chiefs, we automatically can't beat them in the playoffs. Very, very different. With Tom Brady, they hadn't lost to them in the playoffs. Right? They hadn't lost in a win or go home game to them. The Rams hadn't lost to the 49ers in a win or go home game. So to me, I look at those very, very different. Twice now, the 49ers have lost to the Chiefs in a win or go home game. I didn't even tell you this, Sunil. On the way home, it was my second flight. So it was my Houston to Tampa flight. I go to sit down and there's this older guy next to me and he goes, oh, you don't want to sit here. I was like, oh yeah. He goes, I'm your worst nightmare. And I go, uh-oh, you a Rams fan? He goes, worse. And he flipped over his little leather jacket and it said Chiefs. I was like, oh, this guy. I go, you're everybody's worst nightmare, man. He goes, I got to be honest with you, man. He goes, you guys got to fire that coach. You got to fire Shanahan. And I was like, really? I said, why do you say that? He goes, there is no way with that talent, you should have been 0-2 against us in the Super Bowl. You should have beaten us probably both those times from a talent perspective. I was like, yeah, man, it's really rough. I said, the fan base is really having those conversations right now. And he goes, I'd dump him. But he goes, and then when we got off the plane, he's like, good luck this year. And and I was about to say it back, and he goes, before you say it, we don't need it. We're winning the Super Bowl again. I was like, oh, dude, this guy.
Can I respond to Keith real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Difference between those two things, and the big difference is they brought in, one of the great quarterbacks in both of those situations, right? So, we're talking about Tom Brady came in and was able to, beat the Saints. And then Matt Stafford for the Rams is who came in and beat the 49ers, right? So there's a huge change in that could shift the dynamic when you bring in a great quarterback like that. Now, Brock Purdy.
We thought Purdy was going to be it though, right? Like that was supposed to be the great equalizer.
So Purdy has lost to the Kansas City Chiefs multiple times, right? And can he elevate his play? Look, time will say. He's still in his third year, so you can't just write it off that he can't end up becoming much, much better. But that's a big difference when we're talking about, hey, this is the examples that you're giving. We're not talking about Hall of Fame quarterbacks that are just jumping in and affecting that dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get it. It's a weak mindset, but brother, I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. You go into that game, you may feel really good about it, but all of a sudden, it's you got a 10-point lead again and the game's tied and now it's on the line. You don't think those thoughts creep back in? I mean, that's just human nature, man. I don't care how bulletproof you are in your mind. You've seen the most bulletproof people crumble under the craziest of pressures, or just have that one thorn in their side that they cannot get around, man. It's just, for whatever it is, that's the matchup that you just can't beat. So I understand on the surface it's a weak mindset, but it's also very much human nature. Joseph Ernberg says Kyle enjoys humiliation, so loses on purpose. All right, man. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the NFC West. And this might be our last topic, depending on how time goes here. But I put out a poll on Twitter. I don't know where it's at. I should probably, if I say I put out a poll on Twitter, I should probably know the answer of where we're at this point. But either way, the 49ers versus the field in the NFC West. So the question is this, Sunil. It's not just who are you taking. Hypothetically, somebody comes to you right now and says, Sunil, everything you own, every dime in your bank account, everything you own is on the line. You have two choices here. You can either pick the 49ers, who are currently last place in the NFC West, to win the division, or you get the field, meaning if the Cardinals, the Rams, or the Seahawks win the division, you would win if you take the field. Who are you taking to win the NFC West at this current point? 49ers or the field?
I'm taking the 49ers.
Oh,
And
okay.
we can't, and the reason for it, Jesse, is we can't just talk about what we just talked about and then completely flip it like the 49ers aren't that dude for this division the last however many years, right? So the last 2 years, the 49ers basically went undefeated, right? They lost one game when they benched everybody because they were keeping them healthy for the playoffs, right? But the NFC East hasn't been able to even compete with the 49ers over the last, few years. So to me, the way that we might be thinking about the Chiefs, all these other teams are thinking about the 49ers. And we saw it, man. We saw Rams fans being like, oh, after they won, they were talking their mess and seeing if we talk back. And I'd be like, oh, congratulations. And then they'd humble themselves like, I thought we were gonna get destroyed. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like that. How many people did we run into and say that from the Rams fans? Like, I don't think fan bases expect to beat the 49ers. And so until they could prove that they could come out here and defeat the 49ers, I think the 49ers are still the big bad guys on the block. They have one loss, right? They still have 5 games. If they go 5-1, Jesse, I don't think another team in the NFC East is going 5-1. And if I'm putting all my money on which team in the NFC, I'm sorry, the NFC West. Sorry, I didn't mean to say NFC East. But if I'm gonna put my money on which
Through
team
the East too.
if I'm gonna put my money on who I feel like can go if 5-1 in the NFC West, my money's on the 49ers, right? Because they're the ones that have shown to be able to do it most recently and most dominantly. So I don't think that changes just because they let one slip against the Rams. I think that they could fix all of these things. I think this type of loss humbles them. I think some of the interviews that were coming out, some of the sentiments that were said, this team was kind of feeling themselves and just felt like because they've been so dominant and they could just go out on the field and be better than everybody. I think they just expected that was going to happen without maybe being as focused and locked in. I don't think that happens anymore. So my money's still the 49ers win the NFC West. I still think they get a home game to go into the play. I don't think they get the 1 seed, but I do think that they have everything still to be a tough out in the playoffs and still be one of the favorites to make it to the Super Bowl, at least from the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to pick one team, if the question is, are you taking the 49ers or the Seahawks or the 49ers or the Rams or the 49ers or the Cardinals? I'm taking the 49ers. But you're giving me the field. And right now, the 49ers are dead last. And I know it's only 3 games. So if I have to pick one team, I'm picking the 49ers. I think that they're still the team to beat in the NFC West. But when you're giving me all 3, man, and I know that you're 0-2 already in the NFC and 0-1 in the NFC West, I got to go field, man. It's just, you're playing a numbers game at that point. You got 3 chances. You got 3 6 in the fire versus 1. You got 3 fishing poles in the water versus 1. And even though 1 is more expensive and better and might have the better bait, I get it, but you still have 3 versus 1. So I just have to go with the numbers here, man. And I would go with the field to win the NFC West. Again, everything I own's on the line. I got to go with it. And right now, knowing that Hargrave's out for the year, CMC might be done for the year. I mean, not saying he is, but that's a real possibility at this point. You're without Debo for the next game at least. Brock Purdy's now banged up. You've got Bosa playing through an oblique. Kittle, when's he coming back? I mean, there's just too much disarray for me to feel confident that one team versus those 3 teams going to win the division. So that's it, man. I got to go the field, unfortunately.
You got to pull up that super chat again. Weak mentality.
Yeah. Well, weak mentality. I got everything on the line, man. So
So,
you don't, I do. No.
to me, the reason, like, I know it's nice to say, hey, they're in last place to fit a narrative,
Mhm.
but
Well, no, but they are in last place.
I
That's the
know, but
reality right now.
that is reality. But there's also three teams that are tied for 1 and 2, right? So like they easily
Right.
could be in second place. Like next week, they could easily be in second place. In 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks from
They
now, they
could be in
be in
first.
first place. So
Yeah.
so like to me, I still think I still have to look at, do any of these teams, are they showing me that they're significantly better than the 49ers? And I don't think that, I know the Seahawks are undefeated, but I've seen them crumble too many times to believe in them. Um, the Cardinals and the Rams are pretty much tied with us. So to me,
Yeah, I mean the thing that's great, and the thing that would suck if I had to actually make that bet is that in 3 weeks this could look completely different. You're right, because if the 49ers go 3-0 over the next 3 weeks, all of a sudden you're right, they are first in the NFC West. And
yep.
that's just the reality of the situation. So, but they have to go 3-0. And so really that's kind of the bet is, do you think over the next 3 weeks that they will be 3-0? I guess I'm betting that they won't be. But they definitely could be. And so it's not like a bet that I just feel comfortable about. I was like, yeah, I'm putting it on the field and I feel great about it, because I don't. I'm certainly nervous about it, but I would have to go with the field. But in 3 weeks, you ask me again and they're 3-0. It's like, well, the 49ers?
Nah, you just gotta give me that deed, baby.
Oh, whoa, pause. Jeez, did he chill out? Chill out. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says only 3 players on the 2019 team are still left: Greenlaw, Bosa, and Debo. I get it, but and then he says, I'll push back. Purdy only lost one. He got garbage time in the regular season. That's all I'm done. But in this scenario, he would be 0-2, right? Because the scenario is they lose to the Chiefs here in the next few weeks as well. So now you look at it, how many players were on that team in 2022 that lost to the Chiefs? And then 2023, and then now this year, a lot of the players are still the same. Trent. Yeah, go ahead.
And Jesse, to me, I know you're talking about
And
mentality.
Kyle's lost all of the
I'm
games,
I'm not
frankly.
I'm not talking about mentality as far as the reason why, if the Chiefs win again, that the 49ers should just, be sellers. I'm saying because the Chiefs have figured out, especially Spagnuolo, right? Has figured out how to defeat Kyle. And until Kyle can show that he's figured out how to compete with that defense, that's what I'm talking. It's not a mentality thing to me. It's an X's and O's things. Like, for everybody that calls me the Kyle Shanahan homer, I am. Like, I mean, in the sense, like, I truly, truly love Kyle Shanahan and want him to be our coach. But I still know that the Kansas City Chiefs, he hasn't proven that he could beat yet. I think Andy Reid knows how to, when push comes to shove, he has a quarterback and has a system that knows that they're never out of the game. And I think Spagnola has shown that he has Kyle Shanahan's number. It's not a mentality thing. It's like they have to figure out how to do it. It's not that the Kansas City Chiefs are just always getting lucky against the 49ers. They have figured something out. And it's not like they go out and they blow the 49ers out. So it's not like it's not close. It's literally the X's and O's, that we have to see Kyle Shanahan be able to solve that puzzle. Because one time maybe that's luck. 2 times you're like, okay. 3 times you're like, okay, this is a pattern at this point. So that's what I'm really going. It's not about a mindset. It's just about, if you can't win with these pieces against that team, you don't want to add to it. Now, when I say
He brings up Kyle too, which is like, oh yeah, no, he would be 0-5. So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, for me, when I say sellers, I don't mean necessarily trade away pieces. I'm more in the camp that you were talking about. Don't go out and leverage your future. Like, just keep going with the team that you have and see, if you guys can make a run and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
I'm not bringing in another defensive lineman or trading away assets to get like another receiver or whatever the case may be. I think you just keep it as is and see if you could get any magic with the team. But I don't want to trade away picks or leverage the future with the team. That's what I meant by selling.
Yeah, for sure. That's totally fair. Real quick before we get to the other super chats, I do want to shout out Underdog. No longer Underdog Fantasy, by the way. They are just Underdog. They've rebranded, but they do still do fantasy football, which I love. And that's why I enjoy Underdog. But promo code LSS, that'll get you your free pick of the week. This week, it's Patrick Mahomes. I think he has to throw 1 passing yard this week, and you're a winner. So you can play your more or lesses. You can play your weekly or daily fantasy. Sunil, I know you've used promo code LSS. Dude, you were like a walking poster board for Underdog this week, man. You're like, bro, you know how much I'm winning on this dang thing? Like, you want to talk about it real quick?
I'm not a big gambler by any stretch of the imagination.
No. Me neither.
I love fantasy. I'm doing like $2 and $3, $5 bets is like the most that I'm doing. But yeah. I am up like $200 in 3 weeks off of betting like $2, $3, $4. My fantasy teams, like my best ball fantasy teams, are doing much better. Thank you to some of the players that are getting healthy and having big games. Jamar Chase, thank you for finally playing like Jamar Chase, even though you guys are losing games. And for fantasy, you're helping me win, baby. So I think it's so much fun, guys. If you haven't done it, like, you don't have to sit there and play it like hundreds of dollars or whatever. Like, you could even bet just last night I bet $2 and won $40. So like it's just fun to do some of these pick'ems and all that kind of stuff. It's just a great way to stay engaged in football, and try to find a smile even when your team's not winning.
For sure. And I'm the same way, man. I'm like $5, $10, $2, $3. And I always say, like, you want to be very careful with all this stuff. Just set a limit. Whatever you're comfortable with, set a limit on the season. And however you go through that money, whether that's you win a lot, great. But if you go through the allotted money, then to be done. You know what I mean? You have to be able to control it. But I think it is a lot of fun, especially for the weekly fantasy. That's where I'm at with it. Keith says, with this linebacker room and special teams, no way we go 3-0. All right, well then, we'll see. That's how I feel now, but you might change your mind. Shady Luke says, the reason I thought the defense would take a step back is it's incredibly hard to go through 3-4D or offensive coordinator, or 3 to 4 defensive or offensive coordinators all be good and continue to be good. It just isn't a thing. Now, that's actually a really good point, Shady Luke. But they have taken a huge step back. And then one last one, Daz says, why in a Super Bowl or bust season have we not gone all in? Surely we could have gotten a better DC, not upgrading the O-line, waiting till the 12th hour to sign Trent and BA. So they miss camp and are out of shape. Man, all great points. Appreciate y'all. I got to get over to the round table. I'm going to need all of you to follow me over to the NFC West round table. Type it in, go find it. It's going to be hard because these guys are going to be talking a lot of crap, right? Like, this is the interesting thing here. I'm very honest with you guys about what I think with this team, and I'm objective about my thoughts. Over there, I'm just a 49er fan, and I'm trying to represent the 49ers the best way possible. So I'm going to need your support this week because, man, it is going to be tough. They're going to be talking so much ish in that chat. So please, please, please come over to the NFC West roundtable. Check it out, man. Support your boy because I'm definitely going to need it. Sunil, thank you so much for joining as always. I got to get out, fellas. Appreciate y'all. And females, thank you. I saw Sen in here contributing to the chat as well. Appreciate everybody that supports. Much love. Talk to you soon. Peace.